Hey guys, welcome back. So this week we are back to working on the Millhouse here. We left off, I guess, 2 weeks ago now with doing some more milling here, getting some couple of cants milled down into some tapered clapboard siding. The next part to work on is this front area up here. We've got our house wrap going along here, so it's ready to put some siding on. But before we can start putting siding on, we actually have to cut this stuff to length. Now it's about 8 feet long. It's maybe 8'2", 8'3" long, because you want to cut your log a little bit longer than what you want your final length to be, so that way you can cut it exactly to 8 feet. So we need to move this stuff over around to the miter saw, and we'll work on getting that cut to length, and then after that we can start hanging some of this stuff on the front of the mill house. Alright, so we're set up and ready to go here. We got the miter saw set up, we got our clapboard siding over here that we need to cut to length. And actually this is no just random setup right here. We actually have the saw very precisely located, and the idea here is that the last time I was cutting siding to length, a lot of you are going, man, you really got to set up a stop for that siding to hit so you aren't having to measure it each time. And while the saw is set up so that you can set stops for certain distances, it only goes out to like 5 feet or 6 feet or something like that. So there wasn't really a good way to do that. But one of you guys, and I don't recall who it was, said, well, what if you set up the saw right near like a post or something and use the post as your stop? So we're gonna give that a try. I don't know if it'll work or not. We might have the saw trying to move on me a little or something and it may not hold, but we're gonna give it a try, see if this will work. Alright, so we've got all of our boards that we can get the full 8-foot length out of those. That was a little over half of them. Now we've got some more boards here that we can still get some usable wood out of it, but not the whole length. Some of it's because you've got a little bit of bark on here, also known as wane. Now of course, if having the bark on the edge is intentional, then you call it live edge. But for this case, when we're looking for a nice clean edge, this is called wane. And then over here, we did happen to have a bit of a rot pocket in this one cant. So some of the boards, you know, it's got that in it, but the bottom half of those boards were still usable, so we can cut those down into a different length that we can use up there. Alright, day 2. So I was originally thinking that we might start working on putting some siding up here on the front today, but I've decided instead that I would rather try and get some more cants ready for milling up into siding, and I think we're going to try tackling this big guy right here. Now originally I thought I would probably do the log just full length as it is. It's about 12 foot long, but the more that I've looked at it, the more I've decided that I'm just going to cut it down to about an 8-foot log, cut off that crotch that's at the top, and I think it'll make it a whole lot more manageable to work with, especially for the size of the log. It's almost 30 inches across, so I think we should be able to fit it in there without needing to do any chainsaw work on it, but it's still going to be a handful to get up there, rotate it, and pull off the slabs off from it and whatnot. So I think we'll be better off to take it down to 8 foot. And then also up at the top, I noticed that there's a couple old branches that broke off, you know, many years ago, and it looks like they may have kind of rotted down into there just a little bit. And then on one of the 2 main branches that was still living when I took the tree down, I noticed there's a little bit of a rot pocket in the middle of that thing as well. So that top 4 foot of crotch area may be a little bit sketchy as far as the quality of wood in it. So I think we'll just be best just to lop that off and just keep the bottom 8 feet and try milling that up. Alright, well, we got our log all loaded up here, and that is about half the battle right there, especially for a log that is about that much shy of being too big to fit in between the uprights for this mill. But after you get the first pass done and you can flip it over, you got a flat side to work with, it starts getting a little bit easier to work with. But this first setup takes forever to get it just right. Okay, so we got our log milled down into cants, and we ended up with 4 of them out of it, but we kind of milled it a little bit wonky because before I started milling on it, I could see just a little bit of rot at the one end. You know, just a little bit that was started at that end. I thought, well, maybe it'll kind of peter out as we go down through here. So as you can see on this one right here, it got a whole lot bigger as we got another foot and a half down into the log. So it kind of messed up a couple of the cants down at this end, and then also I think because of the rot in there, it led to some shake, I think would be the term for it, some little splits running down through the log. So that half of the cant kind of on that side over there is kind of messed up, but I think on this side we may be able to get some decent full-length clapboards out of it. And then also we had to do a blade change there right before we finished one of those passes. It always has to happen right before you finish. It can't be right at the start. It's got to be 6 inches from the end. So we are on to our very last band that we have here. So I hope that my new bands that I've ordered get here in the very near future before this one gives out. Alright, last day for this week, and today we are going to work on milling these 4 cants down into some siding. Alright, we got to grab the loader real quick to move this stuff out of the way, but before we do that, we are way overdue for greasing the thing, so let's take care of that first. Alright, we got all of our cants milled up here, so finally now, after I don't know how many weeks it's been, 2-3 weeks, we are finally going to start putting some siding up over this wrap that we've got on the upper area of the front of the mill house. Alright, so we're ready to start hanging some siding here, and we're going to do it a little bit differently than we've done it so far, and this is off from a suggestion from one of you guys, and I'm not for sure if it's exactly what you suggested, but either way it inspired the design of this new way of putting it up. And so what I'm talking about is I made this little thing right here, and it's just a piece of sheet metal that's been into sort of an S shape, and the idea with this is that on the side where I'm not holding it, what I can do is clip that over top of the previous board. And that'll just sort of sit there. Then I can just set the next board right on top of here. That'll hold it at the right spacing, and then you can just slide it right out the end because it's so thin, and it would be able to go out between the boards. So we're going to give that a try, see if it works. In theory, it seems like a great idea, but as I have found out, stuff that works in theory doesn't always work in practice, so let's find out. The sun is just dropping down behind the mountain here, so that means it's going to get cold in a hurry down through here. We've got about half of the section below where the windows are done at the moment, and that is going to be the hardest part of this front because it's going to be sort of like the back where we got to move for each board that we put up. And so it takes a while to get this up, but as soon as we get up to the level of the windows, we can just fill in all the way up, straight up in between there. So it should go a whole lot faster. So next week, we'll just be picking up where we left off and finishing off across through here, and then we can start filling in between all the windows. Okay, and one more thing before we wrap up this video that I forgot to mention is that the hangers worked really well. It definitely made it easier to hold the other end of the board for these longer 8-footers than trying to clamp something on there or snap chalk lines, stuff like that. So great idea, they worked really well. But anyways, that is going to be it for this week. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you next week.